it going, ladies and gentlemen? Really appreciate you guys joining me for another video. This is part 3 of my series, Players That Ruined Your Fantasy Football Season. Today I have wide receivers. I'm going over my top 5, and I got a bonus pick for you as well. So how I do this is I am looking at players that I had ranked pretty highly in my pre-draft rankings. These guys really underperformed what we thought and hoped that they were going to do, and therefore helped to ruin our fantasy seasons. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts on some players that screwed up big time for you and hurt you more than you would have possibly imagined. So drop those comments down below. We could share in the pain together. I'm gonna be looking at each player's situations, try to figure out what went wrong and where, so we can hopefully avoid this type of thing moving forward. Now, I'm gonna start with most people's wide receiver 1. No one really I saw had him outside of their top 3 wide receivers in the pre-draft process, and that is my little Cooper Kupp. I had him at number 2 behind Justin Jet Jefferson, so at least that worked out well for me, but he barely finished inside of the wide receiver 2 range at 21 overall. Now, if you have watched any of my other videos, you are likely seeing a trend at this point. The Rams overall disappointed in 2022, and Cooper Kupp was no different. A year after being a legitimate threat for MVP, winning the Triple Crown at wide receiver, Kupp fell victim to a high ankle sprain back in week 10, and that ended up costing him the rest of the season. I will admit that it is tough to have him on this list because even after missing more than half of the season, he still finished as a wide receiver 2 despite being out all of that time. But as many people's number 1 overall wide receiver off of the board, the loss of that on your roster really hamstrung any opportunities you had at going the distance. Kupp next year is going to have legit wide receiver 1 overall upside yet again, but he could not meet lofty expectations on IR in 2022. The next wide receiver I'm looking at is someone I have in one of my keeper leagues. Absolutely love the guy, and he absolutely let me down this season, and that is Deebo Samuel. I had him at my 6th spot. Coming into the year, he barely made it into wide receiver 3 range, could not crack the top 30. For Deebo, although they certainly did not help matters, it was not the injuries and it wasn't the rotating door at quarterback that kept Deebo from repeating his epic 2021 campaign. He never killed you in a particular week, I will say that, but he also did not flash the upside that made him a locked top 10 selection at the position on draft day. Deebo was a top 30 guy in 8 out of his 13 games, so at least he had a decent floor. However, he only hit the top 5 twice in those games. After going for over 1,400 yards through the air last season, Deebo could not even hit half of that number in 2022, and even worse, Brandon Ayuk truthers got their vindication with a big year, and that ended up sapping all the upside away from Samuel. You were left wanting more almost every single week, and that is never a good thing when we are considering such a hefty investment. Deebo was a big letdown for many owners this season. The next guy I am taking a look at who hurt us in a big way was Diontae Johnson. He was my 14th ranked wide receiver heading into the draft, and he finished outside the top 36. Not even a wide receiver 3, which is absolutely brutal. There were a lot of things that did not go DJ's way for him to make the cut here, but no matter how you slice it, he was a major letdown for managers. After going for back-to-back top 20 finishes at the position, both in 2020 and in 2021, he was not even a wide receiver 3 this year. In his first 3 seasons, he averaged 7 tutties per, but he failed to cross the goal line even one time in 2022. Johnson did not get any help at the quarterback position, so it was not all his fault, and he possibly had the worst touchdown luck of any player in the NFL. But his efficiency was also nowhere to be found. When you are getting top 10 target numbers, which he did, the production should follow for you, but it did not do that for DJ. He always seemed like a safe flex, but playing him at any time basically meant that you were sacrificing any kind of upside. As even more salt in the wound, as if it was necessary, George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth both continued to ascend. Chase Claypool also was traded away about halfway through the season. That opened up the door for some hope in a more condensed passing attack, but that did not end up helping out Johnson at all either. Nothing was able to pull Diontae away from his worst season since he was a rookie. Next up on my list is Mike Williams. I had him at wide receiver 16 in the pre-draft rankings. He finished just inside the top 30, and Williams is no stranger to being banged up. However, for much of his career, he was able to fight through those injuries while still putting up decent numbers, and I suppose at face value, he did that yet again here, but a top 30 finish was not what was expected from Big Mike after he sniffed wide receiver 1 land last year in 2021. Between his brutal duds, his tough finish, and his inability to be trusted in your lineups, Williams was a headache to own. In his first 6 games, he fluctuated between monster 100-yard performances and sub 20-yard outputs. He posted 3 of each of those. He also got injured, came back, gave you 1 catch, and then missed another 2 games with injury. After reviving faith with a huge day against the Dolphins though, Williams had just 1 top 20 finish in his last 4 tries with your season on the line. Mike Williams toyed with our emotions far too often in 2022, and that earns him a spot on this list as a wide receiver who killed your fantasy football season. Courtland Sutton is up next. He is probably going to be a sore spot for many an owner. I liked him, not as much as others. I still had him in my top 20 at number 18. However, he actually finished well outside of the top 40 as wide receiver 45. Now, if you've watched some other videos that I have posted on this subject, trend number 2 to notice: lots of Broncos on these lists. However, unlike the others, Sutton was actually very productive early on. He posted 413 yards and a touchdown in his first 5 weeks. He had 4 straight finishes in the top 30. As one of the most hyped players at any position heading into this season, many thought that they had struck gold, and that would become even more evident as the Broncos' sputtering offense to that point finally started to turn it around. We all have hopes and dreams. Unfortunately, this one turned, and fairly quickly. Sutton would get back into the top 30 just twice the rest of the season, and he would hit pay dirt again only in week 18, missing a pair of games along the way. He ultimately also lost the 1A job to Jerry Jeudy. That further frustrated managers who paid a hefty price for his services. Another big hype player that let us down next on the list is Gabriel Davis. His pre-draft ranking for me was 21st, which was lower than consensus, believe it or not. His actual finish was just inside the top 30. He had to make this list because of that massive hype surrounding him as the preseason came to a close. I will not lie, I myself loved me some Gabe Davis, drafted him in multiple leagues, but even I ended up being bullish on him by the time draft day came around when compared to that consensus. Davis ended in some experts' top 15 rankings at the position, so for him to plummet outside of wide receiver 2 range had a heavy impact on many rosters who were betting on a big season from him. For most of the year, you felt like you had to keep Davis in your lineup because of the upside, and in the first 6 weeks, he had 4 touchdowns and 3 games over 70 yards, so no one was gonna blame you for doing that. However, after the bye week, things got dire. Davis found the end zone just 3 times over his final 10 games, and he cracked the 70-yard barrier again just a single time. Absolutely brutal. He struggled with drops and making a consistent impact for an awesome Bills offense. As the unquestioned number 2 wideout in the high-powered Bills passing attack, he flat out did not come through for us, and that is why he makes my list as the last wide receiver here who absolutely killed our fantasy football chances in 2022. Now, that's all I got for you for today's episode. Really hope you enjoyed the content. Let me know about the players that killed your fantasy season at the wide receiver position. We will share our pain together. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe as well, and that way you won't miss a thing. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abraham Opatz, and I will see you next time.